So, you may have noticed that it is the end of the year, and in that, it's the end of a decade. In just a few days, we move to 2020 and a whole new block of years to look forward to. I hope everybody has had the most wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and I hope that the next decade is a wonderful one for every listener and viewer. But as is pretty traditional for just about every gaming outlet, you look back at the year that was at the end of any year, and 2019 is no different in that regard. We have done our end of year awards at digitallydownloaded.net. You can check those out, and there was a lot of games to choose between in terms of what we awarded over our 18 categories in total. There was also, we're also running a series of looking back at the decade that was, where each of the people on the team has contributed the 10 games that were the most influential or memorable or important to them over the decade. And you can check those out one per day right through the break. Otherwise, I wanted to do this video to look back at the year that was from a personal perspective and talk about how good it was, really. Because if you talk to a lot of people, I think 2019 fell a bit flat for them. There wasn't so many of those big marquee releases that really fill in the year and make you feel like there has been those big releases in the year. So, you know, as Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed franchise took a break this year. There wasn't a new one of those that was released. EA's military shooter series, Battlefront, Battlefield, whichever, I can never remember which one it is, but that took a break as well. And yeah, I mean, Sony's big release for the holiday season was Death Stranding, which I think is a very fine game indeed, but a lot of people didn't, and for them that meant that Sony's holiday fell flat. With that being said, I would have to say that 2019 for me personally was a particularly good year. I thought it was an amazing year for game releases, and the reason for that is not so much that AAA space. That AAA space has never been a particular concern of mine, but in terms of the Japanese releases and in terms of the indie stuff that's come out this year, and in terms of the developers like Kojima getting a chance to play with a big budget, it has been a good year. It has been a really good year. The footage that you see on the screen as we talk is just a really small cross-section of some of the stuff that I've really enjoyed. But when you look at some of my favourite franchises, or the ones that I tend to play the most for fun when I'm not doing reviews and stuff, you're looking at JRPGs, fighting games, and visual novels, really. Those are kind of my top three these days. Strategy games kind of coming in as a close four. And across all of those four genres, I have been really well serviced this year. The year, looking at fighting games first, the big one was Dead or Alive 6. I'm a huge Dead or Alive fan, and all jokes aside, I do think that that series does a particularly good job of being both really accessible and offering quite a bit of depth in terms of its mechanics, so that you can pick it up and play it very easily, but then you can spend a lot of time really mastering the systems, finding your favorite character and all that kind of stuff. And I did that with Dead or Alive 6. I haven't stopped putting that game down. Part of the reason is that Koei keeps putting out the DLC, and I have this thing about Murray Rose that I just have to have every costume. But also, it's just a game that I keep picking up. Every time I want to play a fighting game for fun, that's the one I kind of go to. And when it's not that one, it's Smash Brothers. And even though Smash Brothers came out at the very end of last year, the support for that game has been really strong all through this year, with a lot of new characters and DLC and stuff to play with. And it's all been quite good. Nintendo's been very good at giving us new fan favourite characters like Joker from Persona 5 or Banjo-Kazooie. And each time there's been more of a reason to go back to a game that's already huge and basically endless in terms of how much you can play it. So fighting games I was more than covered for, and I don't think, I mean, there are years where there are maybe more fighting games released, but in terms of the ones that I want to play and I play for a long time, this year has certainly had me covered there. On the visual novel front, you saw earlier in this video a clip from Data Live, a visual novel that I've always wanted to play. Being a big fan of Tsunako in terms of her art style, and I quite enjoyed the anime as well. Compile Heart put out a trilogy of the 3 titles. I hadn't played any of them, so having a chance to sit down and really play that was a huge package and a big deal for me. But my very favourite game of the year, and the game that won the DDNet kind of Game of the Year award, was Spirit Hunter NG. And I know that's a very niche game to give a Game of the Year award to, but it is a remarkable example of working with Japanese horror conventions to tell a really intense, really intelligent story. It's absolutely gorgeous thanks to Experience Inc.'s amazing talent with art, and it's just a very intense, really high quality visual novel. And I wish that more people were able to enjoy visual novels for what they are rather than expecting gameplay bits and whatever, because if you get into some of the higher quality ones, they're every bit as good as the best books you read. And Spirit Hunter NG is the kind of exploration of Japanese horror that we just don't get that often, because they don't tend to translate so many horror films or horror books from Japan. We only get a small subsection of them. NG is right up there with the ones that we do get. In addition to all of that, there was another one that was released that really took me by surprise, and that's AI, the Somnium Files. Now, coming from the Virtue's Last Reward trilogy director, I kind of figured that it would be fairly good quality. I didn't expect to get something that I really loved as much as AI Somnium Files. Now, that game tries to be a little bit more gamey in terms of the puzzles that it throws at players. It's got some really extended puzzle sections, and funnily enough, those were the bits that I was less of a fan of. But when the game was being this kind of cyberpunkish, noirish, kind of semi-satirical, but at other times very extreme with the violence and themes, when it was kind of meshing all those things together in terms of telling a really good story, that's when the game really resonated for me. And here it is right here on the screen in front of you, just a small clip of it. It's an amazing work, very, very high quality. And just to quickly digress, I mean, this comes to us from Spike Chunsoft, and Spike Chunsoft has had a really, really good year. It's been one of these publishers that really flew under the radar through the whole year, but when you look at what it published, Crystar, Conception, AI Somnium Files, it put out other games which I can't even remember right now. There was a new Stones Gate that was released. It had a really, really good year. It was definitely a top publisher, and it kept me playing the whole year through. Over on the JRPG front, which is of course very important to me, Sega had a great year with Judgment, which was the perfect way to follow up the Yakuza series with something that was a different look in the world of Yakuza and gave us that Yakuza experience without being a Yakuza title. And I don't know if Judgment will turn into a full franchise in its own right, but even if it was a one-off, it was exactly what the Yakuza series needed, having just finished Yakuza itself and that story arc with Yakuza 6 the year before. So Judgment was a highlight. Other highlights included Spike Chunsoft's Crystar, which I already mentioned. That was an amazing new effort and IP that I didn't have many expectations going into, but couldn't put it down once I started to play. It was that good. Conception was a lot of fun, again from Spike Chunsoft. Square Enix had a great year as well with the JRPGs. I really loved Chocobo Dungeon, Mystery Dungeon Everybody, and I know that's just a HD remaster of a Wii title, but the Wii title I spent hundreds of hours playing. I thought it was... I love Mystery Dungeon games, and that game, with the Final Fantasy charm and Chocobo himself being so cute over the top, really hooked me in and kept me playing, so I really enjoyed that. And another highlight of the year in terms of JRPGs was Koei Tecmo releasing 3 Atelier games in the 1 year, which is an amazing effort. I had every expectation that one of them would fall absolutely flat, but all 3 of them offer something quite different and actually makes sense to release all 3 in 1 year. You had Atelier Riser towards the end of the year, which was the perfect introduction to Atelier for new fans. You had Atelier Lulua, which was the middle one. I can't remember exactly when it was released, but the middle of the year. And it was, as the 3rd sequel, or the 4th title in the Arland series, it was really there for people that loved the Arland series. That was my first Atelier experience, so having the chance to go back into that world was truly special. And then there was Atelier Nelki at the start of the year, which was a very different take on something very creative and innovative from the series and very experimental. It turned it into more of kind of city builder RPG. And it was very fan servicey for fans of the series over the last 25 years that it's been around, because it brought all the characters in from all the games and all of that kind of stuff. So you had you had a game to appeal to the new, you had a game to appeal to the really hardcore Atelier RPG fan, and then you had a bit of fan service for the people who had been playing the series since the start, as a way of thanking them for being so supportive of the series. So, Koei Tecmo had a great year just for Dead or Alive in that game and the Atelier series alone. Finally, on the strategy and tactics side of things, I was more than covered as well. In terms of hardcore strategy, I had Civilization 6 released on PlayStation 4, and yes, I could play it on my PC, but I am a console gamer generally. I do enjoy to playing my games on there, so having the Civilization experience with all the expansions on PS4 was a big deal, and I've actually lost a lot of time to that since it released. On the more tactical side of things, there was Fire Emblem Three Houses, which Nintendo released. It's been a long time since there was another a new Fire Emblem released, and that scratched every itch I had for that series, being very character driven, being very narrative focused, and being very kind of anime in style. It really was the next step forward for Fire Emblem. We'd been waiting to see how that might appear, because before that the most advanced Fire Emblems were 3DS titles, so to have that kind of full console HD experience was a really nice thing. And then one game that did have me playing on my PC an awful lot was Total War 3 Kingdoms. Total War is a great series in its own right, but Three Kingdoms is a particularly special, I guess, bit of history for me. It's something that I've always been a big fan of, so to see another company attempt to do a strategy game around that was really impressive. Obviously there's always been the Romance of the Three Kingdoms series from Koei Tecmo, but to have a Western look at it, and to have the Total War formula applied to it, just gave me a different appreciation for Romance of the Three Kingdoms and so on. So that was another game that really hooked me in for a long time this year. And then, of course, there's the indie stuff, of which I do love, and there is just far too many games to talk about in the context of a video like this. I can't name drop all of them, and you just need to go on Steam or any of the storefronts to see just how many of those things get released every single year, or every single day, sorry. And it's hard to keep many in the mind. But there were three that really stuck out to me that I thought were particularly enjoyable experiences for one reason or another. Untitled Goose Game, which came to us from an Australian developer, no less. I loved, in part because it was a local industry game, and I do like to support the local Australian industry as well. But also, it was just a really good, fun game. It's about a nasty goose that goes around ruining people's days, and it does it in the most charming way you can imagine. It's just got this great sense of humour. It's very dry. It's very Australian. We don't get too many games that really express an Australian view on the world. That game does. If you ever want to know what Australian humour looks like, or sounds like, or feels like, then you just need to play an Untitled Goose Game. I also really enjoyed Kotodama, which was a title from P-Cube, their first developed game, so it was quite a milestone for them. And it's a fairly simple match 3 puzzler, but it is ridiculously fan servicey and unapologetic about that. And I liked it for that reason, without apology. It was just a lot of fun for people who enjoy the kind of fan servicey anime aesthetic. It was good on that basis alone. Finally, in terms of a indie game that was actually very intelligent and really had me thinking, and has had me thinking ever since I played it, Tokyo Dark Remembrance, which was a title that was originally released on PC a fair while ago, but it got a console release on Nintendo Switch this year, and it was the first time that I played it, and it has apparently some extra stuff in it on top of the original PC release. But it's a deep, dark, intelligent, philosophical game, and I really recommend everybody play that as well. I can't really describe it just in terms of this video. Have a read of my review if you want to see just why it is so smart. But yeah, 2019 has been great, as you can tell. I really enjoyed it. There wasn't a moment this year where I stopped playing games. So thank you very much for watching all of my videos over the year. I do appreciate it, and please do like and subscribe if you've enjoyed any of them. Other than that, we will see you in the new year, so thanks again for watching.